All right, so today we're diving into something I think we can all relate to, rejection
Oh, yeah.
and how to deal with it.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a part of life though, right?
Absolutely.
Nobody gets through life without being rejected for something.
Yeah, it's interesting. Professor Russ Curtis, who we're going to talk about today, some of
Yeah.
his research has shown that the way that our brains process rejection
Okay.
is very, very similar to the way that we process physical pain.
Hmm.
So that sting that you feel is like
Uh,
a real thing.
yeah, you feel it in your chest, you
So you
know?
feel it in your body.
So the goal of this deep dive is to figure out like how do we deal with this, right? Because obviously we're going to keep getting rejected for things
Right.
throughout our lives.
Absolutely. It's inevitable.
And so how do we deal with it? And Professor Curtis has some really interesting insights that we're going to pull out today.
Yeah, he does. He does. And the thing is that, while that pain is real and you feel it in your body, how you manage that reaction
Hmm.
is vital for your mental health
I see.
and even your physical health.
Okay.
And he's found that, the people that are ultimately, achieving their goals,
Hmm.
the ones that are really able to make progress and get what they want in life are often the ones that have learned to keep going despite those setbacks.
Right. So just keep getting back up after getting knocked down.
Yeah, persistence is key.
Resistance. All right. So the first strategy that he talks about, and I think this is a good one to start with, is practicing self-compassion.
Yeah,
Now that might sound like throwing a pity party to some people,
right.
but I think the way he talks about it is a little different, right?
Exactly. It's not
Well,
about, throwing a pity party and sort of wallowing in that.
yeah.
It's more about, you acknowledge the pain,
Yeah.
but you also, while you're acknowledging it, you're still holding yourself accountable for future growth.
Right. It's like you're being nice to yourself, but you're not letting yourself off the hook.
Exactly. Think about, how you would comfort a friend
Mm-hmm.
if they had been rejected.
Yeah.
You would be there for them. You would offer them, kindness and understanding.
Yeah. You'd be like, hey, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Extend that same understanding to yourself.
Okay, that makes sense. So what about this next one? He talks about this reframing the narrative.
Okay, that's a good one.
I like this one.
Yeah.
Because rejection, it can feel like such a personal failure, right?
Oh, it does. Like a
Yeah.
judgment on you
Yeah.
as a person.
I'm not good enough. I suck. This is what it means.
Exactly. And Professor Curtis really, wants us to instead recognize the courage it took to even try.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you applied for that job or, you shared your art or you asked someone out on a date,
Mm-hmm.
these are all things that require vulnerability
Yeah.
and courage. And so instead of focusing on that rejection,
Mm-hmm.
you know, he encourages people to try to actively write down
Okay.
3 things that they gained from the attempt,
Okay.
regardless of the outcome.
So like, what did you learn?
Exactly.
Okay.
Like, what did you learn from this experience?
Even if it didn't turn out the way you wanted.
Right.
Okay.
And, even just the fact that you had the courage to put yourself out there.
That's a win in itself sometimes.
Exactly. And his research suggests that, actively writing those things down can significantly shift your perspective.
Oh, so you're taking the focus away from the no that you got and focusing more on the fact that you even tried.
Exactly.
You put yourself out there.
And that's a huge win.
Okay, I like that. And this next one is really interesting to me because I think it's very counterintuitive, and that's he talks about the importance of staying connected.
Yes.
So when we face rejection, especially in like relationships or romantic relationships or anything like that, our instinct might be to like just kind of withdraw.
Retreat.
Yeah.
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 Isolate.
Yeah.
Curl up in a ball.
Yeah, exactly. But he says we should actually do the opposite.
Yeah, that's exactly what he says, because, when you isolate yourself, that can actually amplify the pain.
Interesting.
Yeah. You're alone with your thoughts.
Yeah.
And they can be really negative. And so he advises, actively reaching out to your friends,
Yeah.
your colleagues, maintain those social connections
Mhm.
because, having that strong social support system acts as a buffer.
Yeah, it's like having people in your corner reminding you that you're worth something.
Exactly. You're not defined by this rejection.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So he also talks about finding purposeful outlets.
Yes.
What does that mean? What does that look like?
Well, it's about, channeling that energy
Yeah.
from the rejection into something positive.
Yeah.
So, you think about, hobbies you're passionate about, anything that that really, gets you going
Yeah.
and reminds you of your value outside of that area where you faced rejection.
Yeah, so like finally getting around to that pottery class you've been wanting to take, or
Exact.
spending more time volunteering.
Yeah. Things that make you feel good about yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, like, distract yourself with good things.
In a way,
Yeah.
but it's more than just distraction.
Okay.
It's about, finding meaning and purpose
Okay.
in other areas of your life.
Okay. I like that. And this last one, he talks about, I think this is maybe the most important, but it's also probably the most difficult.
Yeah.
And that's trying not to take it personally, because
Yeah.
our brains are wired
No,
to
it's so hard. It feels so personal.
feel so personal.
Yeah.
Because, it hits that pain center in our brain.
Like you said at the beginning.
Exactly. It's like someone punched you in the gut.
But, Professor Curtis, he makes a good point here. He points out that often rejection really just boils down to things like fit or timing.
Yeah.
Maybe you weren't the right fit for that job,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe the timing wasn't right.
Yeah, or maybe they were just looking for somebody taller. Whatever it is,
It has nothing to do with you as a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these are things that we can't control, right?
It
And
is.
and so, I think a big part of what he's saying is don't get hung up on the things you can't control.
Right. Focus on what you can.
So he does say, though, that self-reflection is important.
Yeah.
And even seeking feedback can be valuable.
Right.
Like, if you're getting rejected for the same thing over and over again,
Yeah. Maybe there's something you can improve.
maybe there is something you can improve. But, at the end of the day, his core message is you just got to keep putting yourself out there.
Keep trying.
Yeah.
You can't let the fear of rejection hold you back.
So the big takeaway from Professor Curtis, I think, is
Yeah.
that while giving up after rejection might feel like the easier path
Oh, for sure.
in the moment,
It's a path of least resistance.
it doesn't lead to growth or happiness.
Right.
It's the people who keep getting back up,
Yeah.
who build that resilience.
They develop that thick skin.
They develop that thick skin, who are ultimately more likely to find success.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what Professor Curtis says?
Yeah.
He says, each attempt, even the ones that end in rejection, they bring you closer
Okay.
to understanding what works.
So even the failures are giving you information.
Exactly. You're learning from your mistakes.
Okay.
And ultimately, that increases your chances of success.
Okay. I like that a lot. So this brings up kind of an interesting question for you listening out there.
Yeah.
Think back on times that you've given up after being rejected.
Mm.
What might have happened if you had chosen to keep going?
Ooh,
What would your life look like now?
that's a good one.
What small action could you take today to revisit a past rejection
Okay.
with a fresh perspective?
I like it.
Something to think about.
Something to think about.
All right, that's our deep dive for today. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.